Historical Roots of Indian Knowledge Systems. Session 1, The Foundations Unit I. Let's start at the beginning. Ancient India didn't just have beliefs, they had systems of logic. Think of this unit as the DNA of Indian thought. Topic 1, Time and Nature. The concept, in the West, time is often a straight line beginning to end. In India, time is cyclical. It moves in circles called yugas: creation, then destruction, then starting over. The rule: humans aren't masters of nature, they are part of it. There is a cosmic harmony between us and the stars. Exam trick: remember the circle. If a question asks about time or nature, talk about cycles and harmony. Topic 2, Dharma and Darshan. Dharma, it's not just religion, it's duty. It's the moral glue that keeps society together. Darshan, this means a way of seeing or philosophy. India has 6 classical schools: the Shaddarshanas. Mnemonic: use NVSYMMBD to remember them. Nyaya: logic, Vaisheshika: atoms, Samkhya: matter, Yoga: practice, Mimamsa: ritual, and Vedanta: reality. Topic 3, Health, Ayurveda and Yoga. Ayurveda, the science of life. It's about prevention, not just cure. The dasas: your body has 3 energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Health is when these 3 are balanced. Yoga, it means to unite body, mind, and soul. Session 2, Science and Math Unit 2. Now, let's talk about why India was a global leader in science before the 12th century. Topic 1, The Giants of Math and Astronomy. 0, India's greatest gift. Without the concept of zero, modern computers wouldn't exist. Aryabhata, he figured out that the Earth rotates on its axis and explained eclipses nearly 1000 years before Europe did. Sushruta, the father of surgery. He was performing complex operations in ancient times. Topic 2, Technical Knowledge ITK. Metallurgy, mention the Iron Pillar of Delhi. It's 1600 years old and hasn't rusted. That is indigenous technical knowledge. Textiles, ancient India produced Dhaka muslin, a fabric so fine it was called woven air. Session 3, The Great Interaction Unit 3. Unit 3 is about the medieval period. It's the story of what happened when Indian knowledge met Arabic and Persian ideas. Topic 1, New Technologies. The Persian wheel, a game changer for farmers. It used a gear system to lift water for irrigation. Gunpowder and paper, these arrived and changed how wars were fought and how records were kept. Topic 2, Medical Synthesis. Unani and Ayurveda, these 2 systems started talking to each other. Doctors, Hakims and Vaidyas shared herbs and methods, creating a richer medical tradition in India. Topic 3, Sawai Jai Singh. He was a king who loved the stars. He built the Yantar Mantar observatories in Delhi and Jaipur. He used both Indian and Arabic math to map the heavens. Session 4, The Modern Era Unit 4. The final unit. This covers the British era and the rise of national science. Topic 1, The Colonial Conflict. Macaulay's Minute, a British official, Macaulay, famously claimed one shelf of a European library was worth more than all Indian literature. This led to the dominance of English education and the sidelining of traditional systems. Topic 2, Nationalist Thinkers. Gandhi, he pushed for self-reliance Swadeshi. He believed the spinning wheel charkha was a symbol of Indian dignity and knowledge. Tagore, he wanted education to be creative and connected to nature, not just rote learning. Vivekananda, he gave Indians spiritual confidence, showing the world that Indian philosophy was universal. Topic 3, The Scientists. J.C. Bose, proved that plants have feelings and worked on radio waves. P.C. Ray, the father of Indian chemistry. Meghnad Saha, a giant in astrophysics. Unit I, Ancient Indian Knowledge Systems and Philosophy. Q1. Describe 6 systems of Indian philosophy in the context of ancient Indian knowledge systems. 7 marks. Indian philosophy, one of the oldest intellectual traditions of the world, is broadly classified into 2 streams, Astika orthodox, accepting Vedic authority, and Nastika heterodox, rejecting Vedic authority. The 6 classical systems known as Shaddarshanas belong to the Astika tradition and form the backbone of ancient Indian knowledge systems. 1. Nyaya logic and epistemology. Founded by sage Gautama Akshapada, Nyaya focuses on the theory of knowledge and logical methods. It proposes 4 valid sources of knowledge: pratyaksha perception, anumana inference, upamana comparison, and shabda testimony. It aims at liberation moksha through correct knowledge. Nyaya contributed immensely to Indian logic, epistemology, and debate methodology. 2. Vaisheshika atomic metaphysics. Founded by sage Kanada, Vaisheshika is a naturalistic system postulating that the universe is composed of eternal atoms paramanas. It classifies reality into 6 padarthas categories: dravya substance, guna quality, karma action, samanya generality, vishesha particularity, and samavaya inherence. It recognizes 9 types of substances including earth, water, fire, air, ether, time, space, soul, and mind. 3. Samkhya dualistic metaphysics. Founded by sage Kapila, Samkhya is one of the oldest rational empirical systems. It posits 2 ultimate realities: Purusha consciousness spirit and Prakriti matter nature. Creation arises from the interaction of Purusha and Prakriti. It identifies 25 tattvas principles of existence. Samkhya provides the theoretical basis for yoga and significantly influenced Ayurveda's understanding of the human constitution. 4. Yoga practical spiritual science. Systematized by sage Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras, yoga is both a philosophical system and a practical discipline. It accepts Samkhya metaphysics but adds the concept of Ishvara God. The eightfold path Ashtanga Yoga Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi provides a systematic method for mental purification and liberation. Yoga remains one of India's most globally recognized contributions. 5. Mimamsa ritual exegesis. Founded by sage Jaimini, Mimamsa focuses on the interpretation of Vedic rituals and Dharma. It holds that the Vedas are eternal and self-validating. Purva Mimamsa emphasizes karma ritual action as the primary path to liberation, while Uttara Mimamsa Vedanta focuses on knowledge. Mimamsa developed sophisticated theories of language, meaning, and epistemology that influenced Indian linguistics. 6. Vedanta philosophy of ultimate reality. Based on the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta explores the nature of Brahman ultimate reality, Atman individual soul, and their relationship. Major schools include Advaita non-dualism of Adi Shankaracharya, Vishishtadvaita of Ramanujacharya, and Dvaita of Madhvacharya. Vedanta shaped Indian spirituality, ethics, and philosophy profoundly. These 6 systems collectively demonstrate the depth, diversity, and analytical rigor of ancient Indian intellectual tradition, encompassing logic, physics, metaphysics, psychology, and spiritual science. Pushpin key tip: remember the mnemonic NVSYMMVD for the 6 darshanas. Q2. Discuss the contribution of Maharshi Sharaka in ancient Indian Ayurvedic treatment. 7 marks. Maharshi Sharaka is universally regarded as the father of Indian medicine and one of the most significant contributors to the ancient science of Ayurveda. His monumental work, the Sharaka Samhita, remains a foundational text of Ayurvedic medicine to this day. Historical background. Sharaka is believed to have lived around 300 BCE, 200 CE, though scholarly debate continues. He was the court physician of the Kushana king Kanishka. The Sharaka Samhita was originally composed by sage Agni Vesa as a disciple of Punarvasu Atreya, and later revised and redacted by Sharaka and subsequently by Dridhabala. The Sharaka Samhita structure and scope. The Sharaka Samhita consists of 8 sthana sections with 120 chapters and over 8,500 metrical verses. The 8 sections include, Sutrasthana general principles, Nidanasthana diagnosis, Vimanasthana specific determination, Sharirasthana anatomy, Indriyasthana prognosis, Chikitsasthana therapeutics, Kalpasthana pharmacy, and Sthasthana successful treatment. Key contributions. Theory of Tridasa. Sharaka elaborated the concept of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha as the 3 biological humors governing health. Disease arises from their imbalance, health is their equilibrium. Concept of Prakriti. He introduced the concept of individual constitutional types based on the dominance of dasas, a revolutionary concept of personalized medicine. 8 branches of Ayurveda. Sharaka documented and systematized Ashtanga Ayurveda covering internal medicine, surgery, and psychiatry, pediatrics, toxicology, rejuvenation, and aphrodisiacs. Panchakarma. He described 5 major therapeutic procedures: Vamana emesis, Virchana purgation, Busti enema, Nasya nasal therapy, and Raktamokshana bloodletting for deep detoxification. Pharmacology. He documented over 600 medicinal plants and 300 animal-based medicines, establishing one of the world's earliest pharmacopoeias. Etiology and prevention. Sharaka emphasized prevention over cure, describing Dinacharya daily regimen, Ritacharya seasonal regimen, and Sadvrita ethical conduct for maintaining health. Medical ethics. He insisted on a physician's duty of compassion, described qualities of a good physician, and outlined the doctor-patient relationship anticipating modern medical ethics by centuries. Embryology. He provided detailed accounts of fetal development, conception, and factors affecting the child's constitution. Significance. The Sharaka Samhita was translated into Arabic as Sharaka and Persian, influencing medieval Islamic medicine profoundly. Sharaka's holistic approach integrating body, mind, and soul in the concept of health resonates with modern integrative medicine. His insistence on clinical observation, diet, and lifestyle management as therapeutic tools makes him remarkably contemporary. Pushpin Sharaka's definition: Swastha healthy person equals one in whom all dasas, Agni, Didas, Malas, and mind-soul are in balance. Unit 2. Scientific knowledge, folk traditions and indigenous technical knowledge. Q3. Write an essay on the development of ancient Indian mathematics. 7 marks. India's contribution to mathematics is one of the most extraordinary chapters in the history of human intellectual achievement. Long before Greece or Arabia, Indian mathematicians had developed sophisticated concepts that fundamentally transformed global mathematical thought. The Vedic period 1500 to 500 BCE. The seeds of Indian mathematics lie in the Vedic period. The Silbasutras 800 to 500 BCE, appendices to the Vedas concerned with altar construction, demonstrate a profound knowledge of geometry. Bodhayana Silbasutras stated the Pythagorean theorem Bodhayana theorem centuries before Pythagoras. These texts show knowledge of irrational numbers, geometric transformations, and the value of square root 2 correct to 5 decimal places. The decimal number system and 0. India's most revolutionary contribution was the decimal positional number system and the concept of zero shanya. The Brahmi numerals 3rd century BCE evolved into what the world now calls Arabic numerals. The concept of zero as a number, not merely a placeholder, was formalized by Indian mathematicians, enabling the development of algebra, calculus, and modern computing. Brahmagupta 7th century CE provided the first systematic treatment of zero and negative numbers. Aryabhata 476 to 550 CE. Aryabhata's Aryabhatiya is a landmark in world mathematics. His contributions include approximation of pi as 3.1416 correct to 4 decimal places, a table of sign values, solutions to indeterminate equations could take a method, and the concept of place value. He correctly explained solar and lunar eclipses, and proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis, a heliocentric insight nearly a millennium before Copernicus. Brahmagupta 598 to 668 CE. Brahmagupta's Brahmasphutta Siddhanta formalized rules for arithmetic operations with zero and negative numbers, solutions to quadratic equations, Brahmagupta's theorem in cyclic quadrilaterals, and the interpolation formula. His work was translated into Arabic and became the conduit through which Indian mathematics entered Europe. Bhaskar I and II. Bhaskar I 7th century and Bhaskar II 12th century, Siddhantasiromani made outstanding contributions. Bhaskar II solved the Pell equation centuries before it was discovered in Europe, developed concepts approaching differential calculus, concept of instantaneous velocity, and his Lilavati is a celebrated treatise blending mathematical rigor with poetic elegance. The Kerala School 14th to 16th century. The Kerala School of Mathematics and Astronomy, centered around Madhav of Sangamagrama, developed infinite series expansions for trigonometric functions sine, cosine, tangent, and the Gregory Leibniz series for pi, discoveries that preceded their European counterparts by over 200 years, raising important questions about the transmission of mathematical knowledge. Legacy. Indian mathematics provided the foundations of algebra, trigonometry, and combinatorics to the world. The decimal system and zero alone transformed every field of human endeavor. India's mathematical tradition, deeply integrated with astronomy, philosophy, and practical arts, represents one of humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. Pushpin-key names: Aryabhata, Brahmagupta, Bhaskar II, Madhav. Remember them with contributions. Q4. Discuss the indigenous technical knowledge in ancient Indian tradition. 7 marks. Indigenous technical knowledge (ITK) refers to the practical, experiential, and community-embedded knowledge developed by local communities over generations. Ancient India possessed a remarkably rich tradition of such knowledge across diverse domains. Metallurgy. India's metallurgical tradition is among the most sophisticated in the ancient world. The iron pillar of Delhi 4th century CE, 7.2 meters tall, weighing over 6 tons, and showing virtually no corrosion after 1,600 years, is testimony to India's mastery over iron smelting. Indian craftsmen developed wood steel, Damascus steel, which was exported throughout the ancient world and was centuries ahead of European steel technology. The smelting of zinc was pioneered at Zawar, Rajasthan around the 9th century CE, the first industrial-scale zinc smelting operation in the world. Textile technology. India's textile knowledge was globally renowned. Muslin of Dhaka so fine it was called woven air, silk weaving traditions, natural dyeing techniques using indigo, turmeric, and madder, the sophisticated backstrap and pit looms all represent layers of ITK accumulated over millennia. The cotton cultivation and spinning technology of the Indus Valley Civilization 2500 BCE is among the world's earliest. Water management and hydraulics. Ancient Indians demonstrated extraordinary hydraulic engineering. The Indus Valley had the world's first planned urban drainage systems. Stepwells Vav of Gujarat, the Grand Anakut Kullanai Dam on the Kaveri River 2nd century CE, still functional, and the elaborate tank irrigation systems of South India demonstrate sophisticated water management knowledge. Kautilya's Arthashastra contains detailed information on irrigation infrastructure, architecture and construction. The science of Vastu-shastra and Shilpa-shastra encoded detailed technical knowledge of architecture, urban planning, and construction. The rock-cut temples of Ellora, Ajunta's cave architecture, the structural engineering of Brihadiswara temple, and the precision of astronomical observatories Yantar Mantar all demonstrate high levels of mathematical and technical sophistication. Agriculture and soil science. Krishi Parasra and other agricultural texts documented sophisticated knowledge of soil types, crop rotation, seed selection, composting, water harvesting, and seasonal cultivation. The knowledge of sustainable agricultural practices encoded in these texts anticipates modern organic farming and agroecology. Shipbuilding and navigation. India had a thriving maritime tradition. The Arthashastra describes shipbuilding techniques. Indian vessels sailed to Southeast Asia, East Africa, and the Persian Gulf. The knowledge of monsoon winds later systematized by Arab navigators as Indian Ocean trade winds was an ITK asset that facilitated global trade networks. Indigenous technical knowledge in ancient India was not merely empirical but often systematized in texts, transmitted through guild Srini systems, and integrated with cultural and ritual life, ensuring both continuity and innovation. Unit 3, Medieval India Arabic Technologies, Ananiya Ayurveda Interaction, Astronomy. Q5. Describe the textiles industry in ancient India. 7 marks. The textile industry of ancient India represents one of the world's most sophisticated and historically significant manufacturing traditions, with evidence stretching back to the Indus Valley Civilization c. 2500 BCE and maintaining global importance for over 4 millennia. Indus Valley Civilization, the earliest evidence. Archaeological excavations at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa have yielded fragments of woven cotton cloth and spinning whorls, establishing India as one of the earliest cultivators of cotton. The Indus Valley people possessed knowledge of dyeing. Madder-dyed cloth has been found at these sites. This makes India's textile tradition approximately 5,000 years old. Vedic period and classical antiquity. Vedic literature mentions various types of fabrics: wool, cotton, and silk. The Arthashastra of Kautilya 4th century BCE contains detailed accounts of textile production, trade regulations, quality standards, and even specifications for government-operated textile workshops. It mentions specific cloths from Varanasi, Mathura, and Bengal as being of superior quality. Famous textile products. Muslin of Dhaka. Woven air Dhaka muslin, so fine that Mughal emperors reportedly received complaints from queens that the fabric was transparent. Its technical name was woven air Abai Hawa or running water Baft Hawa. It required extraordinary skill and specific local conditions. Silk, India's silk tradition, centered in Varanasi, Benares, Kanchipuram, and Assam. Muga and Ari silk, produced silk of global renown. Benares silk brocade kinkwab, incorporating gold and silver threads, was among the world's finest luxury fabrics. Cotton and indigo dyeing. Indian cotton and indigo dyed fabrics were major export commodities in ancient and medieval trade. Indigo itself derives from India. Chintz printed cotton, hand-block printed and painted cotton fabrics from Gujarat and Rajasthan were major trade items with Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. Technology and guild system. Textile production was organized through hereditary guilds. Shrinas weavers Tuntravaya, dyers Rajaka, and merchants Vanak each had specialized roles. Pit looms, backstrap looms, and later draw looms allowed for complex weave patterns. The knowledge of natural dyes indigo ferret tincture toria, lac, turmeric, safflower, pomegranate rind was sophisticated enough to produce color-fast fabrics. Trade and global impact. Indian textiles dominated the ancient world trade. Roman accounts mention the drain of Roman gold to India for silk and muslin. Indian fabrics have been found in Egyptian tombs. Southeast Asian trade was largely driven by Indian textile exports. The Portuguese, Dutch, and British East India companies were all initially motivated largely by the textile trade, demonstrating the global importance of India's textile industry. Medieval period developments. The introduction of the spinning wheel charkha possibly from the Islamic world via Persia and the horizontal treadle loom transformed production capacity. The fusion of Persian and Indian design vocabularies in Mughal patronage created new textile traditions of extraordinary beauty in Kashmir shawls, Agra, and Lahore. Q6. Discuss the spreading of Ayurveda in foreign countries in medieval India. 7 marks. The global diffusion of Ayurveda represents one of the most remarkable cases of knowledge transfer in pre-modern history. This process began in ancient times but was particularly significant during the medieval period through multiple vectors. Early transmission, Southeast Asia. Indian cultural and commercial contacts with Southeast Asia, dating to the early centuries CE, carried Ayurvedic knowledge along with Buddhism, Sanskrit, and Hindu cultural practices. Kingdoms of Cambodia, Khmer Empire, Java, Bali, and Thailand adopted Ayurvedic medical principles. The concept of the three humors Tridasa found its way into traditional Thai and Khmer medicine. Archaeological evidence from Angkor Wat includes inscriptions mentioning hospitals Aruga Yasala established by King Jayavarman 7th 12th century based on Ayurvedic principles. Transmission to the Arab world. The most significant medieval transmission of Ayurveda occurred through the Arab world. During the 8th to 10th centuries, the Abbasid Caliphate sponsored systematic translation of Sanskrit medical texts into Arabic. The Sharaka Samhita was translated as Sharaka and the Sushruta Samhita as Susrud. These translations were facilitated by Indian physicians at the famous Bait-ul-Hikmah House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Ayurvedic concepts significantly influenced Ibn Sina's Avicenna Canon of Medicine, one of the most important medical textbooks in both Islamic and European medieval medicine. Interaction with Unani medicine. Medieval India witnessed a profound and productive interaction between Ayurveda and Unani Greco-Arabic medicine. This interaction was facilitated by the shared concept of humoral pathology Tridasa in Ayurveda corresponding to the four humors in Unani. Physicians frequently used both systems' pharmacopoeias. Hakims adopted Indian drugs while Vaidyas incorporated Unani drugs. This syncretic tradition is particularly visible in the works of scholars like Jiyauddin Barani who documented these interactions. Tibet and China. Ayurveda's transmission to Tibet occurred primarily through Buddhism. The Tibetan medical system Soarikpa is heavily derived from Ayurveda, particularly the Astanga Hridayam. The famous Tibetan medical Thankas medical paintings essentially illustrate Ayurvedic concepts in Tibetan iconography. Chinese medicine also shows influences, particularly in the use of specific Indian medicinal plants and pulse diagnosis techniques. Medieval synthesis. Medieval Indian pharmacopoeias like Raj Nyantu and Dhanvantari Nyantu show integration of Arabic materia medica into Ayurvedic frameworks. The spread of Persian language in India also facilitated bilingual medical manuscripts that served as vehicles for knowledge transfer. Physicians like Hakim Ainul Mulk and the tradition of composite medicine at Mughal courts represent the height of the synthesis. The global spread of Ayurveda during the medieval period demonstrates that Indian medical knowledge was not static but dynamically engaged with world intellectual traditions, both giving and receiving, in a continuous process of enrichment. Unit 4, Colonial Period and Modern Discourses on Indian Knowledge. Q7. Compare between Indian and Western knowledge systems during the colonial period. 7 marks. The colonial period, broadly 18th to 20th centuries, witnessed one of the most consequential confrontations in intellectual history, the encounter between Indian and Western knowledge systems. This was not merely an academic dialogue but a politically charged encounter shaped by power, ideology, and cultural imperialism. Nature of the encounter. The British colonial enterprise in India was accompanied by what scholars call colonial epistemology, a systematic project of evaluating, classifying, and ultimately subordinating Indian knowledge within a Western framework. The Orientalist-Anglicist controversy culminating in Macaulay's Minute of 1835 was a key moment. Macaulay declared that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia, representing the most extreme Anglicist position. Western knowledge system, characteristics. Based on Cartesian rationalism and Baconian empiricism, separation of subject and object. Compartmentalized into distinct disciplines: physics, chemistry, biology, history, philosophy. Privileged quantitative, experimental, and verifiable knowledge. Claimed universal applicability and objectivity. Associated with industrial capitalist mode of production and colonial expansion. Transmitted through colonial educational institutions, universities, medical colleges. Indian knowledge system, characteristics. Holistic, integrating the material, mental, and spiritual dimensions. Embedded in social, ethical, and cosmological frameworks. Transmitted through Guru-Shishya Parampara, Gurukulas, and professional guilds. Encompassing diverse epistemic traditions: Buddhist, Jain, Hindu, Islamic, and folk. Based on Pramanas, valid sources of knowledge including Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Agama. Often practically oriented, tied to livelihood, ritual, and community needs. Colonial disruption. Colonial policies systematically disrupted Indian knowledge systems. The introduction of English medium education marginalized Sanskrit, Persian, and vernacular learning institutions. The scientific survey of India, botanical, geological, archaeological, appropriated Indian knowledge while denying its intellectual status. Traditional medicine was stigmatized, traditional law was codified and simplified. Dharmapal's research showed that pre-colonial India had a vibrant indigenous educational system that colonial rule undermined. Orientalism and its paradox. Western Orientalists Jones, Max Muller, Colebrook studied and translated Indian texts, creating a paradox. While they systematized Indian knowledge in Western academic categories, they also preserved it. However, this preservation often involved appropriation and decontextualization, studying Ayurveda as folk medicine rather than as a scientific system, for instance. Indian responses. Indian intellectuals responded to this challenge in multiple ways. Some, like Ram Mohan Roy, selectively embraced Western rationalism while critiquing its cultural imperialism. Vivekananda argued for the universality of Vedanta and challenged Western materialism. Dayananda Sarasvati reasserted Vedic authority. Scientists like P.C. Ray, J.C. Bose, and Jagdish Chandra Bose pursued national science, demonstrating that Indians could not only master Western science but transcend it. Legacy. The colonial encounter had a dual legacy. It marginalized indigenous knowledge systems while simultaneously stimulating the rediscovery and valorization of Indian intellectual traditions. Post-independence India has grappled with this inheritance, as seen in debates about the status of traditional medicine, indigenous languages in education, and the concept of Indian knowledge systems (IKS) in contemporary curricula. Q8. Explain the thoughts of M.K. Gandhi in Indian knowledge system. 7 marks. Mahatma Gandhi's engagement with Indian knowledge systems was not merely intellectual but deeply practical, ethical, and political. His ideas constituted a comprehensive critique of Western modernity and an alternative vision rooted in Indian philosophical and cultural traditions. Critique of Western Civilization. Hind Swaraj, 1909. Gandhi's Hind Swaraj remains one of the most powerful critiques of Western modernity written by a non-Western thinker. He argued that Western civilization, characterized by machinery, industrialism, and materialism, had enslaved humanity, both the colonized and the colonizers. He challenged the equation of progress with technological advancement and proposed a radically different model based on moral development, simplicity, and self-restraint. Swadeshi and indigenous knowledge. Gandhi's concept of Swadeshi extended beyond economic self-reliance to an epistemological position, a preference for locally produced knowledge, technologies, and cultural practices. The charkha spinning wheel was both an economic tool and a symbol of indigenous technical knowledge, a technology that was appropriate, democratic, and dignity-affirming. Gandhi saw the destruction of indigenous industries and knowledge by colonial policies as a form of civilizational violence. Sarvodaya and the Indian worldview. Gandhi's concept of Sarvodaya, welfare of all, drew from the Bhagavad Gita's concept of Nishkama karma, action without attachment to fruits, and the Hindu-Jain principle of aparigraha, non-possessiveness. He envisioned a social order based on trusteeship where property holders would act as trustees for society, rooted in Indian philosophical ethics rather than Marxist or capitalist frameworks. Doctrine of means and ends. Gandhi's most philosophically significant contribution was his insistence that the means must be as pure as the ends, that satyagraha, truth force, was not a mere tactic but a way of life rooted in satya, truth, and ahimsa, non-violence. This deeply Indian philosophical position challenged both Western political philosophy, which often justifies corrupt means for righteous ends, and Marxist revolutionary theory. Naturopathy and health. Gandhi was deeply interested in nature cure, naturopathy, and Ayurveda as alternatives to allopathic medicine. He believed that the body has inherent healing power and that clean living, proper diet, sunlight, water, and earth were powerful therapeutic agents. His experiments with diet and health, documented in his writings, reflect engagement with traditional Indian health knowledge. Education. Nitalam. Gandhi's Nitalam, new education or basic education, was rooted in the Indian Gurukula tradition adapted for the modern age. He proposed craft-centered education that integrated hand, head, and heart, connecting cognitive learning with manual skills and moral development. This stood in sharp contrast to the Western colonial model of rote, textbook-based, English medium education. Significance. Gandhi's thought represents one of the most articulate and globally influential reassertions of Indian knowledge traditions in the modern era. His ideas on sustainable living, nonviolence, trusteeship, and appropriate technology anticipate contemporary discourses on ecological sustainability, mindful consumption, and alternative development paradigms. He demonstrated that Indian knowledge systems were not merely historical relics but living resources for addressing the deepest challenges of modernity. Pushpinki concepts, satyagraha, ahimsa, swadeshi, sarvodaya, nitalam, aparigraha, trusteeship. Unit, V compulsory, true or false with explanation. Q9. Describe whether the following statements are true or false. 7 times 1 equals 7 marks. A. Indian philosophy is the oldest philosophy of world. Answer, true. Indian philosophy, rooted in the Vedas c. 1500 BCE or even earlier according to some scholars, is indeed among the world's oldest philosophical traditions. The Rigveda contains the earliest known cosmological speculation, ethical reflections, and metaphysical inquiry. The Upanishads 800 to 200 BCE systematized philosophical thought on the nature of reality, consciousness, and liberation. While Chinese and Greek philosophy also developed early, the Vedic tradition's continuity and antiquity make Indian philosophy arguably the oldest living philosophical tradition. However, it is more accurate to say one of the oldest, as Egyptian and Mesopotamian intellectual traditions also predate or are contemporaneous with early Vedic thought. B. Naturopathy is related to 5 root elements. Answer: true naturopathy. Prakriti Chikitsa in the Indian tradition is fundamentally connected to the Panchamahabhuta, the 5 great elements: Prithvi earth, Jal water, Agni fire, Vayu air, and Akasha ether space. These 5 elements are considered the foundational building blocks of all matter, including the human body. Naturopathic therapy uses these 5 elements as healing agents: earth therapy, mud baths; water therapy, hydrotherapy; air therapy, breathing exercises; sunlight therapy, heliotherapy; and space ether, fasting, creating internal space. Ayurveda and naturopathy both affirm that imbalance of these elements causes disease and their restoration brings health. See, there is no any difference between folk and classical traditions. Answer: false. There are significant differences between folk and classical traditions, though they also share important connections and overlap. Classical traditions are typically encoded in formal written texts: Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, transmitted through formal institutions, gurukulas, madrasas, and associated with elite or learned communities. Folk traditions are oral, community-embedded, region-specific, and often transmitted through practice, ritual, and oral memory. In medicine, classical Ayurveda Charaka Samhita differs from local herbal healing traditions. However, they are not mutually exclusive. Classical traditions often crystallized from folk knowledge, and folk traditions continually absorbed classical elements. The relationship is one of dynamic interchange rather than rigid separation. D. Nagarjuna was a famous ancient alchemist of India. Answer: true. Nagarjuna c. 2nd to 3rd century CE, though some historical debate exists between different figures named Nagarjuna, is celebrated as a great alchemist of ancient India. The Rasaratnasamukya and the Rasa Vagbhata are associated with alchemical traditions he influenced or founded. Nagarjuna is credited with discoveries in the field of Rasa Shastra, iatrochemistry, the science of medicinal use of metals and minerals. He worked with mercury, parata, sulfur, and various metals to create medicinal preparations. His work represents the intersection of Ayurveda, chemistry, and metallurgy. He is also celebrated as a great Buddhist philosopher, making him a multidimensional intellectual figure of ancient India. Ayurveda is a treatment of Tridasa. Answer: true. Tridasa, the theory of 3 biological humors, is the foundational principle of Ayurvedic medicine. The 3 dasas are: Vata, air plus ether, governing movement, respiration, circulation; Pitta, fire plus water, governing digestion, metabolism, and transformation; and Kapha, earth plus water, governing structure, lubrication, and immunity. Health in Ayurveda is defined as the balanced state of these 3 dasas. Disease results from their imbalanced dasa dushti. All Ayurvedic diagnosis, nidana, treatment, chikitsa, and prevention, swasthavrita, are oriented around understanding and correcting dashic imbalances. Therefore, Ayurveda can accurately be described as fundamentally a tridasa-based system of medicine. F. Ravindranath Thakur was a humanist thinker. Answer: true. Rabindranath Tagore (1861–1941), Nobel laureate in literature 1913, was indeed a profound humanist thinker. His philosophy centered on the celebration of human freedom, creativity, and spiritual fullness. He believed in the universal brotherhood of humanity transcending national, religious, and caste boundaries. His institution Vyavabarti at Shantiniketan was a living experiment in humanist education integrating Indian classical arts, nature, and universal learning. He was deeply critical of narrow nationalism, as expressed in his famous return of knighthood after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre 1919. His synthesis of Upanishad spirituality, Bengali folk traditions, and universal humanism makes him one of India's greatest humanist intellectuals. The doctrine of means and ends is not related to Mahatma Gandhi. Answer: false. The doctrine of means and ends is most centrally and powerfully associated with Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi's most distinctive philosophical contribution was precisely his insistence that the means must be as pure and truthful as the ends sought. He argued against the Machiavellian principle that the end justifies the means. For Gandhi, using immoral means violence, deception to achieve moral ends freedom, justice was self-defeating. It corrupted both the movement and the outcome. This is why he insisted on satyagraha, truth force, rather than armed revolution. He wrote, "The means may be likened to a seed, the end to a tree, and there is just the same inviolable connection between the means and the end as there is between the seed and the tree." This doctrine, rooted in Indian philosophical ethics, is Gandhi's most enduring contribution to political philosophy. Unit 1. Ancient Indian Knowledge Systems. Question 1. Describe the debate on time, space, and nature in the context of the ancient Indian knowledge system. When you think of time in the ancient Indian context, think of a circle rather than a straight line. While modern thought often sees time as moving forward from a beginning to an end, Indian thinkers saw it as cyclical. This means the universe goes through repeating cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction called yugas. Space, or akasha, was viewed as infinite, eternal, and one of the 5 basic elements Panchamahabhuta that connect all living beings. Finally, nature property was considered sacred and divine. In this system, humans are not separate from nature, we are part of it. Ancient Indian knowledge emphasized living in harmony and balance with the cosmos, rather than trying to conquer it. Question 2. Describe the Indian political and economic thought in ancient India knowledge system. Ancient India had a very advanced system for running a country. The most important name to remember here is Kautilya, who wrote the Arthashastra. Think of this book as the ultimate manual for a king. It covered everything from taxation and diplomacy to military strategy and law and order. Politically, the king was seen as a protector whose main duty was to maintain dharma, or righteousness. Economically, the system was built on a self-sufficient village model. Agriculture was the backbone, but there was also organized trade through merchant guilds. The state collected taxes fairly to fund public welfare, ensuring that wealth was used for social stability. Question 3. Define yoga and discuss the types of yoga in detail. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yaja, which means to unite. It is a system designed to unite the body, mind, and soul. According to sage Patanjali, yoga is about controlling the mind to achieve peace and liberation. There are 4 main paths you should mention in your exam. Karma yoga, the path of selfless action, doing your duty without worrying about the reward. Bhakti yoga, the path of devotion and love toward the divine. Jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, wisdom, and self-inquiry. Raja yoga, the royal path of meditation and mental discipline, which includes the famous 8 limbs of yoga like asana and pranayama. Additionally, Hatha yoga focuses on physical health through postures and breathing. Question 4. What do you mean by naturopathy? Discuss the key principle of naturopathy in ancient India. Naturopathy, or Prakritik Chikitsa, is a natural healing system based on the belief that the body can cure itself if given the right environment. It avoids heavy medicines and instead uses the 5 elements of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and space. The key principles are simple: nature heals, the body recovers naturally. Prevention is best, focus on a healthy diet, exercise, and cleanliness to avoid getting sick in the first place. Holistic balance. Health requires a balance between the body, mind, and spirit. Natural elements. Treatments include things like mud baths, earth, hydrotherapy, water, and fasting space. Unit 2. Science, Astronomy, and Medical Science. Question 1. Describe the major developments in science, especially astronomy and medical science in India till 12th century. Before the 12th century, India was a global leader in science. In mathematics, we gave the world the concept of zero and the decimal system. In astronomy, the great Aryabhata figured out that the Earth rotates on its axis and correctly explained why eclipses happen. In medical science, India developed Ayurveda, the science of life. Two giants stand out: Charaka, who focused on internal medicine and diagnosis, and Sushruta, known as the father of surgery for his incredible work on surgical procedures and anatomy. Question 2. Describe the major contribution of Fatehullah Shirazi and others in science in medieval India. During the medieval period, Indian science grew through the interaction of Indian, Persian, and Arabic ideas. Fatehullah Shirazi, who worked in the court of Emperor Akbar, was a mechanical genius. He invented several scientific instruments and improved military technology, such as gun-making techniques. Other developments included the synthesis of Unani and Ayurveda in medicine and the use of advanced engineering for building forts and irrigation systems. This era was all about Indo-Islamic scientific tradition, which encouraged rational thinking and innovation. Unit 3. Technology and Interaction. Question 1. Describe the development of gunpowder, Persian wool, and textile industries in ancient and medieval India. Technology in ancient and medieval period was very practical. The Persian wheel was a massive improvement for irrigation, using a gear system to lift water and help farmers grow more food. Gunpowder arrived and completely changed how wars were fought. In terms of textiles, India was world famous. We produced Dhaka muslin, which was so light and fine it was called woven air. Indian cotton and silk were so high in quality that they were traded as far away as Rome and Egypt. Our knowledge of natural dyes, like indigo, was also far ahead of its time. Question 2. Discuss the contribution of Sawai Raja Jai Singha in astronomy. Sawai Jai Singh was a king who was obsessed with the stars. He realized that to study astronomy properly, you needed giant, stable instruments. He built the famous Yantar Mantar observatories in cities like Delhi and Jaipur. These stone structures were used to calculate time, track planetary movements, and predict eclipses with incredible accuracy. His work was a perfect blend of Indian traditional astronomy and Arabic scientific influence. Unit 4. Modern Discourses and Scientists. Question 1. Explain the thoughts of Rabindranath Tagore and Swami Vivekananda in Indian knowledge system. Both these thinkers wanted to protect Indian traditions while embracing the modern world. Rabindranath Tagore was a humanist who believed education should be about freedom and creativity, not just books. He felt that learning should happen in nature and help connect all of humanity. Swami Vivekananda promoted spiritual confidence. He believed that Indian philosophy, especially Vedanta, had universal value and could help the whole world. He wanted Indians to be proud of their cultural heritage while also learning modern science. Question 2. Describe the contribution in national science of M. L. Sarkar, P. C. Ray, Meghnad Saha, and J. C. Bose. As India moved toward independence, these scientists used their work to build a national identity. M. L. Sarkar, he founded the first association for scientific research in India to encourage local talent. P. C. Ray, a chemist who promoted scientific education and started India's first pharmaceutical industries. J.C. Bose, a pioneer who proved that plants have life and feelings, and also did groundbreaking work on wireless science and radio waves. Meghnad Saha, an astrophysicist whose work on the ionization of elements helped us understand the physical conditions of stars.